late hours of May 14, 1993, soldiers from the Uganda People's Defense Forces raided Bolipi village in Paibona Parish, Gulu district. As the fog of war thickened, the army responded to an intelligence tip that the Lord Resistance Army rebels had camped at a homestead that was adjacent to a creek. At about 9 p.m., Joyce Aloyo's parents implored her and her siblings to hide inside one of the 6 huts and lock themselves there. Her parents thought this was a safer option than trekking to Paibona Trading Center, a well-guarded vicinity where the community sheltered themselves at night to avoid abduction or being killed by the rebels. Locking themselves in the house usually spared them from the risks involved in trekking 8 kilometers from their village to Paibona Trading Center every evening.
During the daytime, we heard that there is a rebels. They are moving in the village. And we heard that even the soldiers, they are coming from a center.
Aloyo reveals that they had just locked the bolt to the hut when they heard rebels speaking in hushed tones. A fierce exchange of gunfire rang out.
They came at night. They can't even say that this home might be, there might be no people. Maybe people, they have already escaped and they have already sleep in the bush. So they can't even just pass by.
10 minutes later, a grenade was tossed into the hut by UPDF soldiers targeting the rebels.
I was unconscious, but when my dad is around, my dad told me that they thrown the bomb bullets. It came and it burst under the veranda like this, and the power get inside and attack the third child of my stepmother and killed immediately. So by that time, that is how I get these injuries in my limbs here.
As she writhed in pain, her father revealed that the grenade had killed one of her brothers instantly and left her seriously injured. Aloyo's wounds were quite devastating and proved too complex to treat that for the first 6 months she was attended to by surgeons at Gulu Hospital and St. Mary's Hospital, Acholi. Whereas an NGO procured crutches to ease her movement and shouldered her monthly medical bills for nearly 5 years, the organization halted support for her treatment. The organization, she said, recommended to her mother that she get amputated.
I told Mom that no, my leg will not be cutted. Then the APSI, they become very annoyed and they stop from there.
Whereas her mother attempted to seek support from other organizations to treat Aloyo's condition, she would be told that there was no funding.
Mommy even sell this piece of land. This is a very piece of land. She sold it to someone so that she can get the money to support us in a medical service.
Despite her excruciating pain, Aloyo pursued her studies until she dropped out in P7 in 2004.
In the class, I could not sit on the desk. I have to move with some empty bag of the sack. I go and put it in front of the blackboard. Then I used to sit down because I cannot sit up on the desk because I feel too much pain when I sit up on the desk. The toilet is not clean, whereby when I'm feeling like to go to toilet, all the past, I can't. I have to stay until the time, so that I have to come back, have to here home. Then I go for the toilet and I go back to school.
Aloyo says she spent 5 years at home until 2009 when an organization came to Lacho Hospital to treat victims of the war. Upon reporting for the surgical camp, with the hope that the splinters in her right foot would be removed and her metatarsals corrected, she was shocked to be asked for 27 million shillings.
I came back. My grandmom told me, she used to advise me that this one cannot be the headache of your life. You will still have a vision. Then from there I heard that there is an organization that is standing with the people with disability. They call Nudipo. I get trained for hairdressing, design, and styling.
Whereas she has been equipped with the skills, a lawyer finds it difficult to practice the job.
They want you to play it while standing. So over even standing can't even cause me a lot of pain. Over sitting also can make me also a lot of pain. I went to the medical advice in Lacho. The doctor advised me that you have to stop over standing. You have also to stop over sitting.
A medical X-ray film generated from Lacho Hospital recently indicates that the unrepaired damage in her right foot has progressively caused damage to muscles in her waist and groin, such that it continues to aggravate her movement. As sunlight and the clouds drifted away in the humble hamlet of Bungatira, Aloyo grew tired of living in isolation. She tried to get married.
That one, it was a serious struggling. From there, it was terrible. All of the family, they hate me for no reason. That how comes their brother can marry a disabled woman like me? How? And why?
Today she has 3 children she can barely take care of. In 1993, Alfred Otema, together with his brothers, had left Orom Trading Center in Kitgum district to return to their home in Okuti village in the afternoon when they walked into a rebel ambush.
The village's neighborhood was a target by the rebels, and they had just been repelled by the soldiers. However, when we entered the ambush, all I could remember was the sporadic gunshots made at us while we fled in disarray.
Otema regained consciousness while on a sick bed at Kitgum Hospital 2 days after the attack. As he grappled with pain, he was greeted by a shattered right knee covered in bloodied bandages. 4 bullets pierced the knees and 2 got stuck in his left femur, causing him to bleed to near death. Whereas his right leg was amputated a week later, the shots in his left femur are yet to be removed.
I have lived with it for now, but this incapacitation limited my ability to achieve my vision as a young man. I never went to school, and I cannot do any meaningful physical work that can earn me money for survival because I am disabled.
Otema has 2 wives, one in Orom, Kitgum, and another in Gulu, who are taking care of him. He cobbles shoes near Gulu Referral Hospital to be able to fend for his family, which includes 4 children.
The money I raise from mending shoes cannot pay school fees for my children. At times I go for a week without working, and that is when everything becomes hell. The same money cannot afford me even just own a plot of land on which these children will survive tomorrow.
Others came without any physical injury, but for the 10-20 years they've stayed home. They've built conditions that need support, needs medical support. The footings that, the thousands of miles that they footed is now calling for them to go for medical support. The thousands of miles that they footed, they encountered a lot of attack on them physically. Their legs got swollen, Fine, they came back after some bit of rehabilitation. They started feeling well, but they are not healed. As they are growing old, their body now starts reminding them that at some point I was not okay.
At which point shall we now say northern Uganda has actually transitioned from post-conflict? It is hard for us to transition when we still have a lot of these victims who seem to be unattended to by the state and non-state actors. Non-state actors have given a hand. We've had a few initiatives, I think, by Refugee Law Project, I know, that offer support to some of these victims in the Acholi hospital. So they get treatment that is just remedial first aid. But some of these actually need to be operated with huge sums of money.
Since 1986, the Acholi, Lango, Teso and West Nile regions were convulsed by a vortex of turbulence that lasted decades between a host of rebel groups that roamed the vast green jungles to wage war against the UPDF. To escape the slaughter, thousands of civilians were huddled inside internally displaced camps. Inside the squalid conditions, families struggled every day to escape disease and death. It is estimated that more than 10,000 survivors scattered across the region continue to bear the brunt of the conflict, peppered with torture they were subjected to, like maiming and amputation of limbs, ears, and lips at the hands of LRA bands. Others were victims of torture which they were subjected to by the UPDF soldiers. A separate section of this same lot of survivors comprises those who sustained injuries with splinters, bomb fragments, and bullets stuck in their bodies during the conflicts, but these wounds remain unhealed. In 2018, the Feinstein International Center, Tufts University, conducted a victimization assessment survey in which their findings detailed how the LRA's attacks directed against civilians resulted in killings, attempted murder, enslavement, torture, and rape, amongst others. Two-thirds of the 2,605 victims sampled during the assessment had a disability, and half of the disabled could not work a lot or they could not work at all due to injuries sustained during the war. The report indicates that they also discovered that the victims also stressed the need for rehabilitation, therapeutic care, livelihood support, financial restitution and compensation, and educational provision for their household members. The 2006 cessation of hostilities agreement between the government of Uganda and the LRA rebels marked the beginning of reconstruction interventions led by the government of Uganda, development partners, civil society organizations, and community-based initiatives. Some of the more prominent programs include the Peace, Recovery and Development Plan and Northern Uganda Social Action Fund. These interventions largely focus on infrastructure development and issues of critical human development and the rehabilitation of victims of this insurgency by providing post-trauma social and welfare support have been pushed to the backburners. Despite over a decade of reconstruction interventions, a revived focus on human development frameworks remains critical in facilitating the transition from recovery to development. Leaders in the region want government to sanction a forensic audit in regard to the billions of shillings spent to reveal the gravity of the funds that might have been pilfered by senior government officials. There is little support that has been provided by government towards rehabilitating the victims living with war fragments and bullets stuck in their bodies, save for efforts by cash-strapped non-governmental organizations. For example, TPO Uganda, in collaboration with partners such as Mental Health Uganda, has innovatively steered efforts in medication accessibility by educating beneficiaries on expenditure and medication costs. The initiative is termed the Drug Bank, where it seeks to provide integrated physical and psychological rehabilitation assistance to war victims in Awach sub-county of Gulu district and Lakwana sub-county of Omoro district, as well as Muchwini sub-county in Kitgum district. During the 5-year intervention, TPO specialized in surgical treatment in which it supported 78 females and 116 males to benefit from the removal of bullets and for surgery for physical conditions sustained as a result of the war, among other injuries that required medical attention. It has also been able to carry out social psycho education in which 2,500 beneficiaries were given psychological support and another 178 treated. Other efforts, for example, by AVSI Foundation in Uganda and Refugee Law Project in the past, have had a positive impact in supporting war-affected communities in overcoming the pain of living with the fragments in their bodies and the emotional difficulties and psychological distress associated with it. The rollout of psychological and physical interventions has demonstrated encouraging ripple effects, such as surgical treatment of the affected, the reduction of depression relapse, and the improvement of social functioning and active engagement in community activities. Between 2008 and 2015, AVSI, with support from the Italian government, produced and gave more than 2,500 prostheses under the Gulu Regional Orthopedic Workshop Project in northern Uganda. The center provides prosthetic limbs, orthopedic appliances, physiotherapy, counseling, and psychotherapy services. The victims of war who have survived with ailments continue to face challenges of reoccurrence, while medication, surgeries, and specialized treatment are no more because most NGOs closed or scaled down their operations. Ngomokwe of Refugee Law Project says victims should have their limbs replaced.
There is no any direct kind of intervention by the government in those hospitals that geared towards supporting the victims of war. To me, I think the government needs to spell this out so that the victims of war know that if I get to this hospital, I'll get this and this and this a service. This is not there. We've seen many interventions by organizations. Those days, I would say, you hear them calling for free medical surgery, surgeries for children, surgeries for certain condition, and you leave your home knowing you are coming because you are within the lane and you need this support.
He says many victims cannot afford treatment and rehabilitation at hospitals.
The government needs to get a little more serious on the victims by providing free medical support. Most of this medical support that the victims of war get, like from the Cho Hospital or other hospitals, are quite expensive. If you are to buy the limbs, you will part with not less than 1 million shillings, which is something that the victims of war cannot afford. If you are supposed to go for major surgeries, like the rectal prolapse, removal of fragments, a correction of those septic wounds, going for plastic surgeries, all this demands a lot of money.
In 2002, LRA rebels led by Okot Ngwinya Rota from the Senior Brigade raided Opota at dawn and clobbered to death 28 locals using hoes. Their victims were sliced to pieces, and survivors of the massacre were ordered to cook and eat them. The duo is amongst those who fled the massacre scene, but they were struck by bullets which are still lodged in their bodies. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, Stella Lanam, War Victims and Children Networking Director and also an LRA survivor, said that they were partnering with some organizations like the Refugee Law Project and the Center for Victims of Torture to handle their medication and treatment to remove the bullets and splinters from victims' bodies before the projects closed.
There is a year when Todwong came that the government wanted to remove the injury from our people, but at the end, after today, it did not even come back. Some other people, they'll take the private part for those people, but after today, it did not even come back. So my request to the government, at least government should do something for the medical, for the victims.
We seem to be in a situation where one group seems to have moved on, the leaders seem to have moved on, but the locals still say, we are still in this situation that hasn't been addressed, the legacies of the war.
Ms. Okulu says she is yet to recover from this horrific ordeal. Mr. Ambrose Ola, the Acholi Chiefdom Premier, says they are aware of the problem but are constrained to do much.
Given the nature of the conflict, we had landmines, we had bombs, we had all sorts of things. Even right now, we are still getting unexploded ordinances harming people.
Mr. Ola said there is currently no structured way in place, especially by the government, to handle such victims of war who struggle with conventional medical processes without addressing the problem.
there is no structured way in place, especially by government, of handling these persons. They have to go through the conventional medical processes and things like that.
Of course, it's a big debate the world all over, talking about the legacies of war and compensating them, you know, in those areas. Normally, this is a project that does not conclusively come to an end, but it is something that the government actually needs to think about. If you cannot intervene in their medical or physical needs, then at least there's some other levels you can actually